Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server. We are once again with Tiger Shrike, our now level 47 mutation Stalker, who has 26 million experience points earned, 3.6 million to go to get to level 48. We're only 3 levels from level 50 and the end of gaining experience, or not, of gaining meaningful experience, right? Because any level, the veteran levels after that are just bragging rights. They don't do anything for your character. We're down to 30 million influence. And the reason is, I forgot to show you this on the last episode, I went and bought a bunch of enhancements. I had found some invention enhancements. These are level 50 invention enhancements. I figure at this point, we may as well start working on them. But one of the problems with them is they're wildly expensive. Even if you already have all the items to craft them and the recipe itself, these things cost like 300,000 or 400,000 influence to craft, right? Whereas the individual SOs only cost like 45,000 or something to buy. So each one of these is like 8 times, 10 times more expensive than the equivalent SO, which is ridiculous. So I crafted the ones I had recipes for, but I didn't buy any recipes. It's not like I couldn't have afforded to fully trick out this character in IOs, but one of the things I wanted to do was see what do we have in terms of money when we get to the end of a level 50 character if all we've done is buy SOs. So one of my beliefs has been, and I continue to believe this now, that I would have a lot more money than if I was getting IOs. Yes, I know once you put the IO in, they never expire, but you couldn't put level 50 IOs in before level 47 anyway. The level 50 SOs never expire. They're not as good as level 50 IOs, but they're good enough. They're close. But yes, if you bought like level 30 and 35 IOs, they would never expire, but it would cost a lot more, and I'm not sure that it's worth it. So we're going to see, because I'm going to test some of this out on the Mastermind and try to do more IOs on the Mastermind. But I've got a final tally. It costs about 6.5 million to do a full set of SOs on this character. We're not counting any of the inherent powers that I never use, like sprint, and you don't bother to put them on rest and stuff like that. We fully slotted physical perfection. All these other things are completely slotted. I didn't bother to slot revive because I'm probably never going to use it, and so I didn't see the point of slotting it. By the time I get to 50, when I get an extra, at some point I'll find a mutation recharge enhancer that's like a level 49 or something, and I'll slot it in there. But except for that, everything is complete. It costs 6.5 million influence. I didn't include this. I calculated what it would cost if I had done SOs here instead of these IOs. 6.5 million influence to get the 47 set. If we add that to the 4 million at 42, the just under 3 million at level 37, the just over 2 million at 32, the 1.5, just under 1.5 mil at 27, and the 850k at level 22, guys, that means that to get from 1 to 50, or to get from 22 to 50 and buy a full set of SOs every 5 levels starting at level 22, it costs approximately 18 million influence. That's how much it costs. So what we're going to do is see, well, how much influence does it cost to do this with IOs when we do our mastermind? Now, it's not going to be exact because different IOs and SOs cost different amounts. So if the mastermind, so like healing, recharge, damage, accuracy, endurance reducers are like all about the same. They're kind of considered the quote unquote tier 1 enhancers because they do a 33% enhancement as an SO at even level to you. Other things like Swift and like running speed and jumping speed and flight speed are like tier 2 or tier 3. So there are different tiers and they have different costs. And a mastermind might have more tier 2 and tier 3 enhancements than a scrapper who's using all tier 1 pretty much, or a stalker. So I don't know if it's going to be exact, but it's going to be close, and we'll see how much does it cost Nightmare Lass if I keep trying to do IOs and play the market and do all that stuff. How much did it cost? This character, it's cost 18 million influence, and I want to show you something else because you get about an influence per experience point. At this point, we have 26 million experience. So what I want you to see here is if we never sold a darn thing on the auction house, we would still have enough influence to buy all the SOs we needed all the way to level 50. Because we would have earned 26 million influence just by gaining 26 million XP, roughly. It's about 1 to 1. right? Because you get more influence than XP for lieutenants and bosses and less for minions. You get an equal amount for story arc completion and mission completion, and then you would be selling the unneeded SOs and stuff, the unneeded drops to the vendors. And if that's all you did, you would have enough influence to buy all of your enhancements. You would already have it by level 47 for the entire 50 levels, and we would have had it for quite some time, right? Because you'd have to go back something like to level 40 or earlier to get to where we were at 18 million experience. And you don't need the 18 million by level 40, right? By level 40, you only needed about 8 million. So what you can do is look back and see, where did I have 8 million XP? I think it was somewhere around level 32. And by then, you have enough influence to buy all of your enhancements as SOs going all the way forward to the end of the game. And that's why I've said the reason the game balance starts to get off in the upper 30s is because the developers really mostly balanced it with everybody running mostly DOs, because people were poor because they had no auction house, no way to gain millions of influence, no way to farm really in the beginning when the game first launched. And all the beta testers that got into the high 30s, they didn't have enough influence to buy SOs. They didn't really know how to slot. They didn't know which powers to slot or how to slot them. You couldn't tell because the devs hadn't given us any numerical information. They just told us an SO is better than a DO and a DO is better than a trainer. They didn't tell us how. They didn't tell us what the percent increases were. We kind of knew for damage because you could see those numbers, because you could see the damage floating behind the character's head as it was hit. But no other numbers were revealed to the players. Oh, and heal numbers were revealed. But no other numbers were revealed to the players. And consequently, we didn't know if an accuracy increased your chance to hit as much as a percentage as a damage increased your damage as a percentage, or as a heal increased your heal as a percentage. You could maybe put a stopwatch on recharge and figure out what the recharge reducers were, but most of the other stuff you really couldn't calculate. You had to eyeball it. You didn't know for sure, so you couldn't get these min-max builds. You didn't have SOs. You couldn't afford SOs at level 31 and 2 yet, because the game didn't have all this money sloshing around in it. And so when the developers had people beta testing the 30s, they really didn't have full sets of SOs until like level 35. And so it never came out as data in beta. Sorry to rhyme there, but the observation never came out as they were watching us play and logging things, that the level 35 to 40 game was too easy against white cons. That didn't get known until after everybody started getting to upper 30s and 40s. Everybody started by 40 being able to afford full sets of SOs, and by then the way the game scaled, it was already too late to change that, and it made the upper level game too easy. And that's why we have to set things on +2 and +3 to get a challenge, right? Because by setting it on +2, we're essentially turning all of our SOs into DOs, right? Our chance to hit is reduced by so much that it's like fighting a white con with a DO accuracy. The damage we do to them is reduced by so much that it's like fighting a white con with DOs. The heals we do heal back damage, but they heal back a lot more damage, but we're taking so much more damage that we have to heal more often, and it's equivalent to fighting a white con with DOs on your heal powers, right? And so that's why it's that way, because the game, when they were balancing the game, most of the beta testing was happening by players who got their characters to 12, 15, started slotting in DOs, didn't have their powers fully slotted yet because you don't have enough slots. They didn't have SOs in their slots yet, even in the 20s, right, until 30, 32. And so most of the game balance was done with what you can do in the teens and 20s with partially slotted powers. And then when you have fully slotted SO'd powers at 40 and into the 40s, the white cons are too easy. And that's kind of why. And so anyway, 18 million is what you need. So put a pin in that number. So the big numbers to remember are: you need about 850,000 at level 22 to fully SO your character. You need about 1.5 million at level 27. And you need about 2 million, a little over 2 million at 32. Those are the three hard ones. By 35, you will have enough. 37, you will have enough for the rest of the game. Anyway, so that's enough about that. And now we're going to get back into our story arc. And Harvey Mailer, who we're on a story arc for, says he's impressed that we managed to get the Bands of Shu away from the Malta group. The trouble is, right now, they're useless. In order to take you to the psychic plane, they have to be empowered. So we need to bring the bands into contact with a powerful primitive creature, and that should anchor us in this reality so we don't lose ourselves in the psychic plane. Then we'll need to bring them into contact with an extra dimensional entity, and that'll give us the power to transport us onto another plane. And finally, we have to bring them to Penelope to complete the ritual. So the first thing we have to do is to go into a cave and defeat a bunch of powerful creatures. I suspect this is going to be Devouring Earth. And since we're all the way in Peregrine Island, and this is in Brickstown, I'm going to just transport to the mission. Yes, I don't do a huge amount of theory crafting, number talking, with the kinds of numbers that we were talking about in most episodes, but I do it occasionally, and hopefully that helps you see how to do this kind of gameplay where you're just using the original SOs and basically playing the game the way it launched. And the only difference we have is being able to set our difficulty. You couldn't do that originally. And yes, it is the Devouring Earth. Okay. So this is a defeat also, just kill everybody as we go. Again, you can see that when we are at +3, we can easily take these guys out. It's not a huge challenge. But again, if we were on +4, then the Assassin's Claw would one-shot things, and yeah, I like one-shotting things with the Assassin's Claw. And I don't do one-shotting with my Scrapper. I don't always have to one-shot things, but that's the whole reason to have a Stalker. So I'm gonna make sure that I can at least do that to minions and most lieutenants. Let's see if we can one-shot this guy without the build-up. Just curious. Yeah, we can. That's pretty cool. Right, and that allows me to conserve the build-up so I have it for the lieutenant that we have to fight next, right, if there is one. Let's do a cone on these guys. There we go. And then kill the Death Cat. I definitely like the ambiance in this game. I mean, I like how, and I've mentioned this before, I like how the caves are dark, right? They're darker than the outside in daylight. So they definitely have that sense of darkness, but they don't make it so dark that you can't see what you're doing at all, right? They don't make it so dark that you're like, what the heck? Now, it does happen to me on occasion when there's because unfortunately my front room, which is where my computer is, has a lot of ambient light, especially in the morning. I've got 2 windows that face the front of the house on the upstairs, and both of them are letting in a lot of light. And even with the blinds closed, there's just a lot of light that comes in because the blinds aren't, completely blocking the light. You're just mitigating it. And I actually like the amount of brightness and light in my house. It's a townhouse, and I'm an interior unit, so I have solid walls on both the north and the south side, but the east and west walls have lots of windows and there's lots of light. And I don't really feel like I'm in a townhouse because of how much light gets into the house. Whoever designed it, the architect, did a really nice job with figuring out how to make the ambient light nice and make it feel open and airy, even though you're really in a tiny little narrow, well, not tiny little, but sort of this narrow tunnel. And he made it feel like you're in a house. And so it's very cleverly done, and I love it. But when I'm playing video games at 10 o'clock in the morning and the sun is coming through the windows, even with the blinds open, it's very hard to see. But in terms of just not my house's ambient light, but just the way the game looks under normal circumstances, you're playing it at night or you're playing later in the day when the sun isn't coming through my windows, I like that it is dark in the cave, but they have these lighter portions, right? Like where this sort of magma is, and you can see, you've got like little luminescent fungi and stuff. You can see where you're going, but it still feels like it's dark and you're in a cave, right? And the other thing I like is the sound. I don't know if you can hear it because I reduced the sound of the game so that you can hear my voice, but there are little like drips and little like murmurings in the background. It really feels like you are in a cave. I think they did a really nice job with stuff like that. Um, sort of the sense you get when you're wandering through missions is extremely atmospheric. The labs feel like a lab with all the electronic sounds, and caves have little drips and murmurings, and you hear rock falls and things like that in the distance. The warehouses have things like gear sounds and conveyor belt sounds and that sort of stuff. Oren Bega has magical sounds. Portals have these really cool, like, mystical sounds to them. They just did a really nice job of making you feel like you're in these locations, both visually and orally, right, auditorially. And so I think they did a really nice job overall with the way the atmosphere of this game is. I've raved about the city itself too. It feels like a real city. It's very realistically designed, um, and yet it still feels like a superhero city, right? Everything, it's realistic, but yet larger than life with these giant statues and these huge skyscrapers. Not that they don't have skyscrapers in New York, but just the way it's arranged, it just feels larger than life and yet realistic. I think they got the the um, the unquantifiable elements of this game, the parts that don't involve numbers and calculations, but just the feel of the game and what it, the music that's going on, the ambient sounds, the way they arrange the city, the way they arrange the missions. They made it feel realistic and yet comic booky, like you're in a superhero world. And I think they just did such a nice job with that, that I can't say enough good about that aspect of this game. And it is one of the reasons I keep coming back, because I want to be in the game. I want to be in the world. I want to run through Paragon City. There was what was it called? Paragon Chat. There was an application called Paragon Chat that was after City of Heroes died. And I think the people involved with Score, which was with Leandro's server, were also involved with Paragon Chat. But basically, it was if you had the City of Heroes client and you were you could log into, I don't know, it was somebody made up a server. I'm not sure how they did it, but the idea was you could log into City of Heroes. There were no powers. I think you could do the movement powers. There were no actual powers. You couldn't build a character, right? You could build like the costume and stuff, but you couldn't get powers for your character. You could only get flight and super jump, I think, maybe teleport. I don't even know if you could get teleport. I know you could get flight, and maybe super speed, but there were no powers other than movement. You couldn't fight anything. There were no villains. There were no missions that you could go on, but you could wander around Paragon City. I don't know if you could go through the whole city if it was just Atlas Park. I'm not really sure. But there were lots of people who would log in there because it was basically like a chat program. So you could log in, you could talk to other people, you could make costumes, you could see each other. And there are still videos on YouTube on how you could get into Paragon Chat. And I don't know if you still can. I suspect hardly anyone uses it if it's still there. But think about this, that the game was beloved by so many people. The atmosphere of the game was so beloved that instead of using a Discord or whatever, they would log into a server where you couldn't do anything but just walk around an empty city that only had maybe a few other players in it. No NPCs, no villains, no people walking around. Why does this guy, I know he has invincibility on, but he shouldn't be able to floor me with one power like that. It's ridiculous. 73% chance with this. So I had a 50% chance. I shouldn't have been missing him that much. So anyway, people love City of Heroes so much. They love the feel of the game, the atmosphere of the game so much that they would log into basically a chat server that showed them images of the game, of the city, while they were chatting, just because they loved it so much. And so that tells you just how much people do enjoy the atmosphere of the game. And for me, I know I was watching video of, when I first heard about the existence of Paragon Chat, I was watching video of somebody showing how to do it that was years old. And he was like flying around Atlas Park, and I looked at it and just was like, I almost wept. I mean, I said, oh, I just wish I could go through Atlas Park like that and enjoy the city of Paragon again. And one of the things that's been great about the Homecoming server, the Rebirth server coming online, is that I do get to go through City of Heroes and through Paragon City again and enjoy it. And it's been wonderful. I mean, I started taking it for granted again, which is not surprising. It's been a year, but over a year. And I don't know how many hours I've played of this game now. You know, probably, on the order of, I don't know, hundreds, thousands? I don't know, a lot. So, I've played a lot of City of Heroes, and it's hard not to take something for granted like that when you're playing it so much. But every once in a while, I just realize what I get to do, which is play City of Heroes, and that they get to do it again, and I'm just kind of amazed and grateful all over again. It's been so awesome, and I can never thank the people who run the servers enough. I mean, I know I've had my differences in many of them with the people running Homecoming. I can't film anymore because of their silly rule about that, and it's frustrating. It's super frustrating because the main reason for it is nonsense, right? They think that because they're not letting people film their game somehow, that means they have a better chance at NCSoft letting them officially take over, which is never going to happen. And I've got some issues with Leandro and so forth, but one thing I will always be grateful for to both them and Wretched and his group who run this server, Rebirth, is just the fact that they're doing this and allowing me to play City of Heroes again, which until April of last year I thought I was literally never going to be able to do. I thought the best we were going to be able to hope for was something like City of Titans or Ship of Heroes, both of which are in various stages of development. I think Ship of Heroes might be further along. They have some cool ideas. They might be games that I want to play, but it was very clear from gameplay video and from comments by the developers and the way they're designing these games that although those games are going to be superhero games, they are not going to play like City of Heroes. And I think to some degree they're afraid to make them play too much like City of Heroes because they don't want to get sued for copyright violation and that kind of thing. But this is the game that I love. And I can't even play, I mean, you want to do superheroes and not City of Heroes, you can play Champions Online right now, but I can't play that game because it's just too different. It's not the way, it doesn't play the way this game does. You can't, queue up attacks. You've got to charge up your abilities. I hate doing that. I've always hated that mechanic in games. It's literally the equivalent of you have to do Brawl over and over again until you charge up Assassin's Claw or something. And that I don't like that. I prefer timed recharges on powers. I prefer that you can queue up powers. I love that you can do that, which they don't let you do in any modern MMOs anymore. Queuing up powers is a no-no. It's considered bad design by a lot of players who want more of an action, like a Xbox or PS2 console-style action game. Those are the games where you have to charge things up because people don't want to monitor their endurance. They don't want to have to stop attacking or slow down their attack rate because the endurance has to build up. They just want to click, 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 click as fast as possible. And that's a perfectly valid way to want to play, but it's not the way I enjoy playing. And I much prefer this slightly slower, more deliberative style It's much more for me, and I really enjoy it, and I will always prefer this way of playing a video game, playing an MMO, and so as long as Ship of Heroes and these other games, like I'm almost certain, I could be wrong, I don't want to badmouth Ship of Heroes, and I'm almost certain with Ship of Heroes, and it might have been with City of Titans as well, that in the demo videos it appeared that they have a global cooldown, the so-called GCD. I refuse to play MMOs with GCDs. I absolutely hate that. Right, and I've explained this before. The global cooldown is where you click one power and it recharges all of your clickable powers. Right, it doesn't recharge them the full amount, but every one of them goes through like a 1 second recharge, and that prevents you from queuing up powers, which I hate. I want to be able to queue up powers. I don't like global cooldowns. I've never liked them. So the other thing I don't like about games is just stylistically. Like, for example, in City of Heroes, when you're doing I can show you here. I'm going to, while I click focus, I'm going to move. And you see my character stopped and did the attack animation without moving. I actually like that. A lot of people hate it. I like being rooted while you do your attack animation because to me, it's more realistic. What I don't like about a lot of these games is you do the attack animation and it doesn't root you. So your character is running around like this while you're attacking people. And so you've got this guy in front of you and you click the attack, and while you're attacking him you run this way. So now your character is going slash 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 up here and you're doing damage to a guy over here. I hate that. It's just so dumb looking, and I've never liked that. And I'm looking right at you, Star Wars The Old Republic, because it pretty much does it that way. And I can remember playing my character with the awesome lightsaber animations, and there was one animation that rooted her, which I absolutely loved, and people hated it, and they took it out of the game. It was like a double saber attack where she like hit you from the front, hit you again from the side, spun around and hit you again. And if you, I don't know if you moved, it broke the attack, or if you just couldn't move during the attack, but it was pretty much a root, and everybody hated it. And the last time I was in there trying to play Star Wars The Old Republic, as far as I know, that attack was gone. And I couldn't find it anywhere, and I think I looked it up and that animation is gone. And it's because people hate to be rooted, but I don't hate it. I actually like it because I think it makes the animations look more realistic and believable. So, there's a lot of aesthetics with this game, and a lot of aesthetics with the game's mechanics that are supposedly unpopular with MMO players, but I don't know if they're really unpopular, if the developers are just misinterpreting what players want or don't want. I really don't know. But supposedly these are unpopular, and they're unpopular also with players who came to MMOs from console games more, and as a consequence of that, they want more of a first-person shooter type control system on an MMO, which I don't want. If I wanted to play a first-person shooter, I'd play a first-person shooter. If I'm playing an MMO, I want to play an MMO. So I actually prefer this. But on the other hand, I'm the sort of player that likes turn-based games as well. One of my favorite fantasy role-playing games is Divinity: Original Sin. I played that 1 and 2 co-op with a friend of mine, and we loved it. And I love the turn-based. I mean, it pauses the whole game while it's your character's turn, and you can actually think tactically about, well, what's the right tactical move here? We could actually discuss for 10 minutes while it's my character's turn. What should she do? Should she walk over here? Should he go over there? And I like that feeling. I like the ability to sit there and think about what you want to do and how you want to do it, which is something that when a game gives you that ability, oftentimes players will complain. They'll say they feel like they're not like as if they're not quote unquote playing the game because it's all happening so lowly, or whatever you want to call it. And again, anybody has a right to that opinion. If you feel that way, that's fine. But for me, I like the slower, more deliberative way that you play a game like, say, City of Heroes, where I actually have the time while I'm in combat to like sort through my inspirations and everything. To me, that doesn't. Not only isn't that a problem, but I like that it's possible to do that. So, speaking of what we're doing here, we have a mission where we're defeating all these guys. So, I'm just going through and trying to clean up everybody as we go. So, I've fought these guys before and complained about it, I think, with Silver Phoenix. These guys are almost, they're turning on invincibility. And it went away, but what they're turning on, I'm convinced, what they are turning on is the launch version of invincibility, not the nerfed version that tankers have now, where you turn on invincibility and it gets you like 2% defense for every guy around you. They're turning on the pre-nerf version where it was much higher. It used to be with invulnerability tankers that once they got invincibility, they were in fact invincible. That were, if they got 2 or 3 guys around them, they'd be impossible to hit. And you wanted as a tanker to surround yourself as much as possible with enemies, and then you would have like a 25, 30, 40 defense, and you'd become almost unhittable. I mean, you could turn your invulnerability tanker, you could give your invulnerability tanker as much defense as a reflex scrapper by just surrounding yourself with enough enemies. So with this character, if we look, right, this is giving him 15% defense to all, and increasing his 2 hit by 15%, just by having me next to him, right? The only way a tanker of today could get that up that high would be to enhance it, first of all, and be surrounded by many guys, because a single guy wouldn't give you plus 15. I think it used to be plus 15, and then like plus 10, and then like plus 5, and so forth, with like diminishing returns, but I'm not really sure. Now it's like plus 2, plus 4, plus 6, plus 8, something like that. It's almost trivial, and I remember checking it with Liberty Lass, and I think you can even see some of that maybe on the videos that I posted. I'm not sure if I posted the post-invincibility episodes, or if those are just still on my hard drive because of the rules from Homecoming saying I can't post them. But I know I put on the defense thing and I checked it, and it's like 5% for the first guy, and then like 4%, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, 1, 1, 1, something like that. So if she's surrounded, she might get plus 15% defense, but she certainly wouldn't get it from a single foe. But I think it used to be that good. See how I can't hit him at all? And by the way, that's 15% defense. My character has a ridiculously high base to hit, right? So it dropped a 60%, according to this, to a 49. I don't know why it'd be 60%. It should be way higher, because she's got single origin accuracy on that. So I don't know. I feel like it's doing more than plus 15%, regardless of what the tooltip says. So now we're going to take the bands to Penelope Inn. And I think we're just going to shortcut to Ouroboros, go to Independence Port, because you can go straight there from Ouroboros. And while we're there, we'll sell any things that we have that we don't need. Ooh. Didn't mean to go that far. So what do we have that we don't need? Anything? So I'm going to go ahead and keep these generic enhancements, because we can go ahead and use them when the time comes. I don't think we can manufacture any of the inventions. No. We're getting close on a couple of them. I got to check the vault, because I may actually have stuff in the vault that we can use, but I'm not really worried about that right now. We don't have enough materials to make any sets, so there's no point to worrying about it. So we're going to talk to Penelope Inn, and I think then we will stop, since we're well over 30 minutes now. Up. There we go. And she says, sure, it's real easy to complete this ritual. Sort of like flipping a mental switch. Yep. there you go. The bands of Shu are now empowered with the essence of the Egyptian goddess Shu. Shu is a god, not a goddess. She's the one who kept the sky and the earth separate. No, he is the one. Shu is a male character. What most folks don't know is that he also had the task of keeping different planes of existence from folding into one another. By wearing the bands, you can manipulate the planes of existence and walk among them. Very cool. Okay, so we're going to contact Harvey. And he knew we had it in us, so we're done with that. We're not going to contact him any further because we're going to stop there. We're now 2 beads into level 47, so we've already done 20% of this level. And we'll do some more, probably close to another percent in the next episode, but that'll be tomorrow. Till then, I am Scarperlock, and this has been City of Heroes.